In September 1967, Dr. King wrote a letter to Adolf Held, who was the president of the Jewish Labor Committee. And he wrote him about a meeting that Dr. King's Southern Christian Leadership Conference participated in. At that meeting, a resolution that blasted Zionism and embraced the position of the Arab powers had been talked about and considered. In the letter, Dr. King explained to Mr. Held that beyond offering opening remarks, he had no part in the conference. He explained that had he been at that meeting during the discussion of the anti-Zionist resolution, he would have, and I quote, "I would have made it crystal clear," he said, "that I could not have supported any resolution calling for a condemnation of Israel and an unqualified endorsement of the policy of the Arab powers. Israel's right to exist as a state," Dr. King wrote, "is incontestable." Now, some might say that Dr. King was just trying to placate the Jewish community with these comments, but that's not true. His support of Israel was strong. And in a March 25th speech in 1968, a speech he delivered before the Rabbinical Assembly, Dr. King said, "Peace for Israel means security, and we must stand with all of our might to protect its right to exist, its territorial integrity." "I see Israel," he said, "as one of the great outposts of democracy in the world, and a marvelous example of what can be done, how desert land can be transformed into an oasis of brotherhood and democracy. Peace for Israel means security, and that security," he said, "must be a reality." Days after expressing this support, on April 4th, 1968, Dr. King was murdered. He would be 94 this weekend. I miss him even though I didn't know him. The world needs him. Had he lived, I'm certain that Dr. King would have helped the Jewish and the black communities understand each other's histories and present lives. He would have shown us that while our journeys have been different, we have so many shared experiences, and our fight for liberation, our fight for freedom from oppression, and for an end to the hate is a battle that we share. And he would have reminded us that for Jews, being black does not mean that one is not Jewish. And for the black community, being Jewish does not mean that one can't find a home in both communities.
Wow. Okay.
We are brothers and we are sisters.
Amen. Amen.
Our children are each other's children.
Amen.
And our hostages are your hostages. Those murdered in Israel on October 7th, including many people of color, are part of our collective community. The hate from groups like Hamas and Hezbollah, the hate so many of us in the Jewish world are living with right now, has within it the same destructive seeds that have led to the hate directed at the black community. And the lies and the propaganda and the media bias and the failure of academia to promote the truth, all of these things and more have led to what Dr. King is surely crying over in heaven: the division of the black and the Jewish communities. Peace for Israel means security, Dr. King wrote. And we, he insisted, must stand with all our might to protect the right to exist, Israel's territorial integrity. On October 7th, that security, that territorial integrity, was undermined in the most barbaric of ways. Murder, rape, the stealing of people from their homes. This flies in the face of everything Dr. King believed. My dear friend, Keisha, it hit her one day. And she felt that bond between us so deeply. She came to me crying in the weeks following October 7th, weeping, broken. And she opened up her arms and she said to me, "I'm sorry." And I said, "For what?" She said, "The hate directed at all of you, it's wrong." And you hugged me. And in turn, you lifted me up. Her compassion, her support. Thank you. After George Floyd, like too many black men, was murdered by a member of law enforcement, I and many in the Jewish community reached out and strengthened our bonds with the black community. It shouldn't have taken that nightmare to do this, but we reconnected. What's happening here is unusual because unfortunately many in the Jewish world, including many Jews of color, have not felt the support from the Black, the Latin, the Asian communities that we feel tonight. And God, we have so desperately needed that support over the past almost 100 days. Again, that's why your presence tonight is beyond a gift. You see, the haters, the same haters who took Dr. King from the world, continue to do a good job at telling a different story, burying the truth that Dr. King understood, that as he taught, Israel's right to exist as a state is incontestable. We are falsely and maliciously labeled as white oppressors and colonizers. Even though the vast majority of Israeli Jews are people of color, and even though the land of Israel was taken from us, stolen from us centuries ago, and rightfully returned to us 76 years ago. To my friends in the black community, I implore you to hear Dr. King. Join us as we dive deep and reconnect with the truth. And don't simply do what too many do, which is accept what you're told about us. I'm literally preaching to the choir tonight. But to others, get to know us. Come with us to Israel. Get to know her people, your brothers and sisters in the battle for true liberation. Now, all of this being said, Dr. King was smart. He was a prophet. And in his 1967 letter to Adolf Held, he wrote, "The great powers have the obligation to recognize that the Arab world is in a state of imposed poverty and backwardness that threatens peace and harmony." Some things haven't changed. He didn't put the blame for this on the Jews or on the state of Israel. He did not call for an intifada or embrace anti-Semitic tropes. He did call out what he referred to as Arab feudal rulers who are focused on oil wealth while neglecting the plight of their own Arab peoples. Still, this truth, this prophetic vision of Dr. King, is a reality. While not focused completely on oil wealth, Hamas and Hezbollah have one objective: annihilate the Jews at the expense of their own people. And Israel's Arab neighbors, even the propaganda machine that is called Al Jazeera, states that the Arab world has abandoned the Palestinian people, and it's true. Dr. King proposed a solution: statesmanship by Israel and progressive Arab forces who, in concert with the great powers, recognize fair and peaceful solutions, should be the concern of all humanity and must be found. I agree with that statement. Now, if only Israel can sit at a table with these progressive Arab forces, they're few and far behind, but they're out there. Unfortunately, they're afraid to come to the table. As my friend George Temmel pointed out tonight, we remember what happened to Anwar Sadat, who sought peace. He was killed. Tonight we recognize another prophet who sought peace, and he too was killed. We need those progressive Arab leaders to come forward. Let us acknowledge the obvious. Hamas and her allies, including nations like Qatar, these aren't progressive Arab forces. Hamas's stated goal is the elimination of Israel and the annihilation of the Jewish people. And let us remember that the hatred that fuels this terror is the same hatred that led to the slaughter of 140 Nigerian Christians and the desecration of 26 of their villages just a few weeks ago on Christmas. But guess what? A lot of you probably didn't even hear about that, because the media doesn't share it. They're too obsessed with us, with the Jews, with Israel, and with promoting lies about Israel and helping to spread the evil that led to October 7th. And let us keep in mind that within the Arab world, 1.7 million innocent individuals, many of them migrants from places like Africa, are living in modern-day slavery, especially in Saudi Arabia. And again, the media overlooks this while wrongfully demonizing the democratic state of Israel. Dr. King, like many of us, understand that the ultimate peace and security of the situation in and around Israel, these are his words, will require Israel to give up some territory. And again, let's acknowledge the truth that Israel has done just this over the years. In fact, in 2005, Israel gave Gaza to the Palestinians. And then Hamas took over, and Israel's security was undermined. And this brings us back to Dr. King's insight, his words. Peace for Israel means security, and we must stand with all our might to protect its right to exist, its territorial integrity. To our friends outside of the Jewish community, we know that the war in Israel has many layers. It's complicated. It is beyond painful. Innocent lives on both sides are being taken. But this is not a war against Palestinians. this is a war against Hamas and all forces determined to undermine our security and threaten our freedom. And when it comes to Israel and Hamas, Israel and terror, there are not two justified sides. There's one justified side. Hamas attacked us. Hamas broke the ceasefire long before October 7th. And we're rightfully defending our very survival. And I know that Dr. King would be supporting us, supporting Israel right now. And to our friends outside of the Jewish community, we desperately need your support, your love, because we're broken, we're exhausted, and we're afraid. As Ecclesiastes teaches us, there is a time for war and a time for peace. Right now, tragically, we find ourselves in that time for war. And we know that neutralizing Hamas, which is something Israel will accomplish, is just the first step in our long journey towards peace. And we believe, despite it all, that there will be a time for peace. Because as Dr. King said when he accepted the Nobel Peace Prize, I refuse to accept the view that mankind is so tragically bound to the starless midnight of racism and war that the bright daybreak of peace and brotherhood can never become a reality. So please, whatever your background, whatever your belief, whatever the color of your skin, whatever your racial, your ethnic, religious identity is, let's stand together and walk united towards the bright daybreak of peace and of unity. Shabbat Shalom.